Let's get brutally honest. Hollywood history isn't just about the box office blockbusters or those classics you've heard quoted a million times. The 60s were a wild, rule-breaking decade, packed with movies that once made critics nervous and left audiences dazed, but somehow slipped right through the cracks. How many gems have you never even heard of, let alone seen? Buckle up because you're about to discover 15 forgotten films from the 1960s that deserve to blow your mind, if you dare look back. The Swimmer, 1968. Let's shatter the myth of suburbia as a place of comfort, because The Swimmer doesn't just peel back the layers. It shreds them with unsettling precision. Burt Lancaster, usually cast as larger-than-life heroes, slips into something even bolder here. A broken everyman, still wearing his dazzling grin and Olympic physique, but cracking at the edges. The story seems simple. Ned Merrill decides to swim home by crossing every backyard pool in his wealthy Connecticut suburb. But what starts as a quirky adventure rapidly descends into a fever dream odyssey. Each pool Ned visits isn't just a pit stop, it's a reckoning. He meets old friends, ex-lovers, bitter rivals, and even his estranged daughter. Every conversation slices deeper, exposing his lies, regrets, and the illusions he's desperately clinging to. The sun gets harsher, the water colder, and the smiles around him more forced as reality closes in. The American dream is rotting right before your eyes, and nobody dares speak its name. Behind the scenes, The Swimmer was nearly as chaotic as Ned's journey. Production troubles, reshoots, and recast roles, legendary director Sidney Pollack even stepped in for reshoots. Audiences in 1968 weren't ready for its harsh truths or its surreal structure. Critics were divided. Was it a satire, a tragedy, or something altogether unclassifiable? Over time, the answer became clear. The Swimmer is a masterpiece of existential dread, a mirror for anyone ever haunted by what if. Rewatch it now, and you'll see why Lancaster called this his favorite performance. It's hypnotic, gut-wrenching, and disturbingly timeless. A cautionary tale about denial, aging, and the price of pretending. If you're ready for a film that turns the American backyard into a psychological battleground, this forgotten gem is the deep end you need to dive into. Petulia, 1968. If you thought The Summer of Love was all peace and harmony, Petulia is here to show you the hangover. Richard Lester's kaleidoscopic love story explodes the myth of 60s bliss with jagged, experimental storytelling and aching melancholy. Julie Christie is Petulia, beautiful, impulsive, seemingly free-spirited but profoundly broken. She latches onto George C. Scott's Archie, a recently divorced doctor just trying to keep his sanity in a city buzzing with change. But this isn't your run-of-the-mill romantic drama. The editing is fragmented, memories and future moments bleeding into the present. There's a scene where Archie and Petulia drift through a party in slow motion, their voices drowned out by John Barry's eerie score and the surreal chaos around them. At every turn, love is fumbled, misunderstood, withheld, or tainted by wounds nobody's brave enough to show. San Francisco is a living, breathing character here, caught between psychedelic optimism and the cold reality of what comes next. There's abuse, alienation, and an undercurrent of social commentary. Petulia quietly eviscerates the myth that love can save you if you refuse to save yourself. The supporting cast, Shirley Knight, Richard Chamberlain, add layers of betrayal and heartbreak. Audiences in 1968 recoiled. Critics called it confusing, even too European. But decades later, Petulia stands as a haunting, ahead-of-its-time vision of fractured love in a fractured world. It's the film that captures what it feels like to be lost in a city, and in yourself. At the moment, everything's supposed to be possible. If you want the real, unvarnished 60s, it's here, and it hurts. The Incident, 1967. Imagine this. The New York City subway, late at night, metal screeching, fluorescent lights buzzing, and a handful of ordinary people trapped together when two young thugs step in and turn routine into terror. The Incident isn't just a thriller, it's a nerve-fraying pressure cooker that dares you to ask, what would you do if you were there? Martin Sheen, in his feature debut, and Tony Musante play the sadistic duo who hold 17 strangers hostage, emotionally and physically, for one endless, excruciating ride. Director Larry Pierce makes the most of a stripped-down set, using handheld cameras and close-quarters tension that feel almost documentary real. The film never lets you look away. Every flinch, every sideways glance, every cowardly silence is captured. The passengers, a cross-section of 60s America, from a squabbling couple to an elderly man, from an off-duty soldier to a frightened child, each reveal their fears, prejudices, and limits under stress. What makes the incident so brutal is its refusal to let anyone off the hook. The real horror isn't just in Sheen and Musante's cruelty, it's in the passengers' helplessness and apathy. Nobody is a hero here. The social commentary is as blunt as a punch to the face. In crisis, most people look away, freeze, or hope someone else steps up. When it dropped in '67, audiences and critics were rattled. Too raw, too uncomfortable, too honest. But that's why it survived as a hidden classic. A morality play for anyone who's ever ridden the train and wondered, could this happen to me? If you're ready for a movie that'll leave you sweating and questioning your own courage, The Incident is your stop. Point Blank, 1967. Forget everything you think you know about revenge thrillers. Point Blank isn't just a film, it's a visual punch to the gut, an existential puzzle wrapped in neon shadows and violence. Lee Marvin stars as Walker, a man betrayed by his wife and best friend, shot and left for dead after a heist gone sideways. But instead of giving you the usual guns-blazing hero's journey, director John Boorman throws you into a fractured psychedelic LA dreamscape. The story moves in jagged, non-linear fits. Is Walker alive or dead? Dreaming or hallucinating? Reality and memory blur as he stalks his way through the city's corporate underworld, smashing through doors and psyches with equal force. There's a sense of menace in every frame, a violence that isn't just physical, but psychological. The editing is as ruthless as Marvin himself. Scenes cut off mid-action, colors shift from washed out to eye-searing, and dialogue is often replaced by silence or echoing footsteps. Point Blank was ahead of its time. Too cold, too ambiguous, too artsy for mainstream '60s tastes. Critics were baffled, but a cult audience started whispering, "This is what the future looks like." Today, its DNA is everywhere, from Pulp Fiction to Drive. This is the movie that made revenge stories weird, smart, and dangerous. Want a film that refuses to explain itself, that drags you into a world where nothing is safe and every answer just raises more questions? Point Blank is your new obsession. Don't expect comfort. Expect a cinematic slap that lingers. Charlie, 1968. What's more terrifying, losing your mind or realizing just how much you have to lose? Charlie doesn't flinch from either. Adapted from the classic short story Flowers for Algernon, the film follows Charlie Gordon, a gentle, developmentally disabled man working menial jobs, mocked by everyone except a compassionate teacher who sees his potential. When Charlie volunteers for an experimental brain operation, the impossible happens. His IQ soars, he becomes a genius, and the world opens up in dazzling, psychedelic new ways. But the miracle doesn't last. As Charlie's intelligence peaks, his emotional world grows more complex and lonelier. He falls in love, questions everything, and faces heartbreak with a clarity he never wanted. The fear of regression, the knowledge that it's all slipping away, is like a ticking time bomb in every scene. Cliff Robertson delivers a heartbreaking, Oscar-winning performance, making you feel every moment of hope, joy, confusion, and fear. Director Ralph Nelson goes wild with '60s visual experimentation, split screens, rapid cuts, color washes, dream sequences. At the time, some critics sneered at the gimmicks, but decades later, those flourishes put you right inside Charlie's disorienting journey from darkness to light and back again. Charlie is the rare film that's both a product of its era and timeless in its emotional wallop. It's about intelligence, love, loss, and what makes us truly human. It's one of those movies that stays with you long after the credits fade, as both a warning and a celebration of the risks of truly living. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. 1968. Think you know loneliness? The Heart is a Lonely Hunter will challenge every preconception you have, and then some. Set in the oppressive heat of a small southern town, this film doesn't just tug at your heartstrings. It plucks them until you're feeling every raw, awkward, beautiful note. Alan Arkin, nearly unrecognizable, disappears into the role of John Singer, a deaf-mute who becomes an accidental anchor for the town's misfits and outcasts. Singer, despite his silence, hears more than anyone, quietly observing, helping, and empathizing with people who barely see each other. What makes this movie extraordinary isn't just the plot, it's the messy, tangled web of relationships and dreams gone sideways. Sandra Locke plays Mick Kelly, a teenage girl desperate to escape poverty through music and books, but crushed by her family's struggle and her own self-doubt. Then there's Dr. Copeland, an African-American doctor fighting a losing battle against bigotry and illness. Even the town drunk and the lonely cafe owner find themselves drawn into Singer's orbit. Director Robert Ellis Miller lets the drama simmer, using silence as powerfully as dialogue. Moments linger, a glance, a gesture, a sudden burst of frustration or tenderness. The film never takes the easy way out or sugarcoats the pain. By the end, you're left reeling, feeling every ounce of longing, defeat, and flicker of hope. When it released, audiences didn't quite know what to do with it. Too quiet, too downbeat, too much truth. But today, its honesty feels like a rare gift. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter isn't just a forgotten 60s film. It's a masterclass in empathy and emotional storytelling. If you ever wanted proof that movies can make you feel less alone, this is it. Mickey 1, 1965. Let's get weird. Mickey 1 is what happens when Hollywood lets paranoia, jazz, and existential dread loose in Detroit, and then dares Warren Beatty to outrun them all. This is no ordinary thriller. Beatty's Mickey is a stand-up comic with a problem. He thinks the mob is after him for some forgotten slight. Or is he just running from his own shadow? With Arthur Penn directing, the film throws reality and sanity into a blender and hits puree. Everything about Mickey 1 is off-kilter. The jarring camera angles, the feverish pacing, the wild jump cuts. Beatty races through smoky nightclubs and empty lots, hounded by shadowy figures and his own spiraling imagination. The film borrows from French New Wave and jazz improvisation, with Stan Getz's soundtrack swirling and darting as unpredictably as Mickey himself. Comedy routines bleed into nightmares. Jokes become confessions. Critics at the time scratched their heads. Was it too smart for its own good? Too arty? Audiences didn't know how to process a crime movie that refused to play by the rules. But that's exactly what makes it so ahead of its time. Watching it now, you see hints of Taxi Driver, Punch Drunk Love, and every film that lets you live inside a character's fractured mind. Mickey 1 is a jolt of anxiety, a movie that lives in the cracks between ambition and fear, success and self-destruction. It's not comfortable viewing, but it's unforgettable, and it'll stick with you the next time you wonder if your own worries are following you too. The Young Girls of Rochefort, 1967. U.S. release 1968. Think musicals are all sunshine and happy endings? The Young Girls of Rochefort will make you want to dance in the street, but it might leave a bittersweet tear in your eye too. Directed by Jacques Demy, this French-American co-production stars Catherine Deneuve and Françoise Doléac as twin sisters dreaming of escaping their small seaside town for the big city, true love, and adventure. And then Gene Kelly shows up. Yes, the king of Hollywood musicals, bringing American flair and effortless charm. From the opening minutes, the film bursts into color. Pastel costumes, candy-colored sets, and choreography that fills the screen with swirling, joyful movement. Michel Legrand's score is impossibly catchy, blending jazz, pop, and classic show tune hooks. Every song is a celebration, every scene brims with hope, longing, and the kind of bittersweet nostalgia you only realize when you're older. But beneath the dazzling spectacle, there's a poignant undercurrent. Demy weaves a tapestry of missed connections, what-ifs, and heartbreaks hidden beneath the smiles and pirouettes. The twins' dreams feel both attainable and heartbreakingly fragile. The supporting cast, lovesick sailors, eccentric artists, wistful mothers, add layers of comic relief and pathos. When it came to American theaters, The Young Girls of Rochefort was too French for some and too modern for others. It didn't break box office records, but its legacy only grew. Today, it's a cult favorite, a Technicolor ode to possibility and regret. If you want a musical that makes you believe in magic but isn't afraid to break your heart, this is the one. Seconds, 1966. Imagine waking up with a new face, a new body, and a second chance at youth, only to find yourself even more lost than before. Seconds is the ultimate identity crisis movie, and it hits like a nightmare you can't shake. John Frankenheimer's psychological thriller starts with Arthur Hamilton, a disillusioned banker who's offered the chance to become someone else, literally. After faking his death, he's surgically transformed into Rock Hudson, reborn as Tony Wilson, an artist in California's bohemian paradise. At first, it's a fever dream of freedom. Wine, parties, beautiful people, everything he thought he wanted. But the paradise quickly curdles. Hudson, usually so sure of himself, is rivetingly awkward, a man at war with his own body, never at home in this new skin. Frankenheimer uses every trick in the book. Fisheye lenses, surreal editing, jump scares. You feel Arthur's paranoia, his terror that someone or something is always watching. The supporting cast adds layers of dread, especially as Arthur realizes he's not the only one trapped by false promises. The company that rebirths men like him is a faceless, ominous force that makes the film as much a critique of consumerism and conformity as it is a personal tragedy. Audiences in 1966 were disturbed. Critics were divided. The movie flopped, then slowly became a cult touchstone for fans of psychological horror and sci-fi. If you've ever wondered what it means to truly escape yourself, Seconds is your cautionary tale. It's haunting, stylish, and unforgettable. Pretty Poison, 1968. Ready for a love story with a serious mean streak? Pretty Poison is a black comedy, a thriller, and a twisted coming-of-age story all rolled into one dangerous little package. Anthony Perkins stars as Dennis Pitt, a lonely daydreamer just out of a mental institution who falls head over heels for Tuesday Weld's radiant, all-American cheerleader, Sue Ann. But don't let her innocent smile fool you. Sue Ann is far from harmless. The two form an unlikely partnership, Dennis spinning wild fantasies about being a secret agent, Sue Ann all too eager to play along. But soon their games escalate into real crimes, arson, murder, and it's never quite clear who's leading whom. Perkins is brilliantly twitchy and sympathetic, channeling echoes of Psycho without ever repeating himself. Weld is a revelation, switching from naive to chilling in a heartbeat. Director Noel Black keeps things taut, lacing every sunny small-town scene with mounting dread and pitch-black humor. The tension comes from watching innocence turn toxic, and from the slow realization that the biggest threat may not be who you think. Pretty Poison didn't find its audience in 1968. Critics loved it, but it was too edgy, too twisted, too ahead of its time for mainstream crowds. Today, it's a cult classic, beloved for its sly subversion and chilling sense of fun. If you want a forgotten 60s film that'll leave you unnerved and oddly exhilarated, this is your ticket. Fail-Safe, 1964. Imagine a world where one wrong button press could end civilization, and everyone's powerless to stop it. That's the pulse-pounding terror at the heart of Fail-Safe, Sidney Lumet's ice-cold, sweat-inducing nuclear thriller. The setup is deceptively simple. A technical glitch in the U.S. Air Force's command system sends a squadron of bombers racing toward Moscow. Henry Fonda, in full man-under-pressure mode, plays the president, forced into a series of impossible moral calculations while the world sits on a knife's edge. What makes Fail-Safe so gripping isn't explosions or chaos. It's the suffocating dread, the slow realization that technology, for all its promise, is both a tool and a trap. The action unfolds in real time. Pentagon war rooms, stiflingly small, sweat-soaked and humming with panic. Phone calls between Fonda and the Soviet premier, his voice trembling as he tries to talk down annihilation. The cast is a murderer's row of character actors, Walter Matthau, Dan O'Herlihy, and Frank Overton, each adding gravitas and raw anxiety. Lumet keeps the camera tight, the lighting stark, turning faces into haunted masks. There's no musical score, just the mechanical whir of computers and the ticking of clocks. When Fail-Safe premiered, it was overshadowed by the satirical juggernaut of Dr. Strangelove, released the same year with a nearly identical plot. But while Kubrick used laughs to undercut the madness, Lumet serves you pure, unfiltered fear. This isn't a film that lets you breathe. It's a cinematic panic attack, a what-if nightmare that plays all too real in any era. If you're ready for a forgotten classic that'll leave your nerves jangling and your mind racing, Failsafe is required viewing. Don't expect comfort. Expect to question every assumption you've ever had about the people in charge. The Group, 1966. Think the drama of friendship, ambition, and heartbreak was invented in the modern era? The Group blows that myth to pieces with a fearless, whip-smart ensemble tale set in the 1930s, but quietly radical for the 60s. Directed by Sidney Lumet and adapted from Mary McCarthy's best-selling novel, the film follows 8 Vassar graduates, each with her own secrets, desires, and battle scars, navigating life after college. Candice Bergen stands out as the enigmatic Lakey, but she's joined by a who's who of young talent. Joan Hackett, Elizabeth Hartman, Joanna Pettit, and more. The movie zips from New York apartments to the front lines of personal revolution, divorce, infidelity, birth control, careers, breakdowns. Topics that seemed explosive in the 30s were still taboo in the 60s. And the Group doesn't flinch. Instead, it lets the women speak, fight, make mistakes, and above all, grow. What sets it apart is how real it feels. The friendships are messy, not always supportive. The men, often secondary, are sometimes allies and sometimes obstacles. Lumet's direction is brisk and intimate, never lapsing into melodrama or sappiness. The film's energy comes from its dialogue, witty, fast, vulnerable, and unapologetically sharp. At the time, some critics complained it was too crowded, too blunt, or too ahead of the curve. But looking back, it's obvious. The Group was paving the way for everything from The Big Chill to Girls and Sex and the City. It's an overlooked, powerful time capsule of women's lives, flawed, funny, raw, and real. If you want a film that feels like your smartest friends fighting for their place in the world, this is it. Ride the Whirlwind, 1966. Forget everything you know about Westerns, the grand showdowns, the gleaming heroes, the black and white morality. Ride the Whirlwind throws you into a dust-choked, nerve-rattling world where survival is a coin toss and justice is just another word for luck. Monte Hellman directs this stripped-down masterwork with a screenplay and starring turn from a young Jack Nicholson, Before the Sunglasses and Smirk, all raw nerves and desperation. The story is minimalist but merciless. Nicholson and his crew are mistaken for outlaws and hunted across a brutal landscape by a posse that never asks questions. There are no grand speeches or clear villains, just men trying to outrun fate, nature, and their own bad luck. Hellman's direction is as lean as the script. No sweeping vistas, no rousing music, just the crunch of gravel and the whisper of wind. What makes Ride the Whirlwind unforgettable is its refusal to comfort. Violence happens fast, and death is often random or unfair. The landscape, as much a character as any gunslinger, is merciless, rocks, scrub, and endless sky, swallowing hope with every shot. Nicholson's performance is all jittery vulnerability, a man barely keeping fear at bay. This wasn't the Western Hollywood wanted in the 60s. It flopped commercially, but later critics and filmmakers from Quentin Tarantino to the Coen brothers pointed to it as a touchstone for realism, ambiguity, and grit. If you want to see the American West as a place of moral confusion and existential dread, Ride the Whirlwind is the hidden gem you need. They shoot horses, don't they? 1969. How much suffering would you endure for a shot at hope? They shoot horses, don't they? Is a marathon of misery and resilience, literally. Sidney Pollack's masterpiece plunges you into the grim world of Depression-era dance marathons, where desperate souls compete for prize money by dancing for days, even weeks, on end. Jane Fonda is electric as Gloria, a woman whose cynicism barely masks her shattered dreams. The contest is run like a circus. A charismatic, heartless MC, Gig Young, who won an Oscar for the role, stirs up the crowd, pitting the dancers against each other as exhaustion, hunger, and despair strip away their dignity. Michael Sarrazin, Susanna York, and a parade of unforgettable supporting players stagger and stumble through the endless nights, each with their own reasons for hanging on and for wanting to let go. Pollack's camera weaves between sweat, tears, and hallucinations, creating a hypnotic, almost suffocating sense of doom. The contest becomes a metaphor for survival itself, relentless, arbitrary, and often cruel. As the hours grind on, the film forces you to ask, are the dancers victims, survivors, or just entertainment for a society that stopped caring? When it released, the film was a critical and Oscar darling, but quickly faded from public conversation. Maybe it was just too unflinching for comfort. But time has only sharpened its impact. If you want a film that will leave you shaken, haunted, and maybe a little grateful for your own quiet life, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Is the one to endure. The Pawnbroker, 1964. Some movies go deep. The Pawnbroker goes straight to the bone. This is the kind of film that leaves a mark, raw, uncomfortable, and devastatingly human. Rod Steiger delivers the performance of his career as Sol Nazarman, a Holocaust survivor numbed by loss now running a pawn shop in Harlem. He deals in other people's desperation by day, but at night he's trapped by flashbacks of unimaginable horror. Sidney Lumet, a master of tension and compassion, shoots the film with jittery handheld realism. Scenes in the present are cold, gray, and alienating. Memories of the camp slam into the story without warning, leaving Sol and the viewer reeling. The supporting cast, including Brock Peters and Jaime Sanchez, bring Harlem to vivid, sometimes harrowing life. Everyone here is scarred, everyone searching for meaning. At the time, the film broke boundaries. Its depiction of trauma, sexuality, and urban despair drew protests and censors, but it also changed what American movies could talk about. Steiger's performance, by turns icy, explosive, and heartbreakingly vulnerable, anchors the story, forcing audiences to confront not just his pain, but the pain all around him. The Pawnbroker didn't make millions, but it changed lives, including the lives of the filmmakers who saw what cinema could be. If you want a forgotten 60s film that will challenge you, unsettle you, and ultimately move you, this is your destination. So there you have it. 15 cinematic shockwaves from the 1960s, lost in the shuffle but more powerful now than ever. Which one's going on your watch list? Which forgotten gem are you itching to debate in the comments? Drop your favorites, challenge my picks, and let's keep this conversation wild and alive. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more deep dives into Hollywood's hidden treasures. After all, history is only forgotten if we let it fade.